Marco. Okay, it's time to begin. Um, I am very proud to introduce the two speakers of tonight, Professoressa Helena Coch from Barcelona and Professor Renato D'Alançon from somewhere in Chile and now in Berlin where he's working. You can read their curriculum vitae outside, so I don't want to spend much time because we are late. Okay, the two professors spend part of their professional life studying the relationship between environment and architectures from different point of view. And Professor Marco Bovati and myself had to introduce the two figures, but I really don't want to spend much time. And I want to thank them to be here with us. And for the conference, I asked the two speakers not to spend more than 40 minutes if possible, 45, no more. And I really want to thank them, and please share your information with us, and I'm delightful to hear you, okay? Have a nice time. The first speaker will be Professor Helena Coch, the only woman in the Miaw, I mean, in one of the 7 group of the Miaw workers. So welcome here from Barcelona. Thanks for the speech.
So, good evening, and first of all, I would like to give my thanks to the Polytechnic for this invitation. I would appreciate to be here with you today. And the second and important thing is to apologize for my bad English, because for different reasons, familiar reasons, I have not been using it last more than 5 years. So now I have to reuse it. So it's in the same line of different things that we are going to see here, because it's not the same to start with something that you don't know at all, or starting with something that you did years ago and you put in your mind another again. So I would like to focus architecture, or the approach of environmental approach to architecture, in this way, to think about actions that we have in our ADN, but we forget always, or nowadays, maybe. I would start with a photograph that makes me think about the use of architecture. Which is the use of architecture? Because here we have people that is spending their weekend in the nature, and which is the less quantity of architecture they need. Only a chair, a newspaper, and nothing more. So it's the limit of the use or useful space. So maybe we have to construct something or to do something more, but this can be a first architecture approach. So if we go to the very well-known, I suppose for all of you, Brundtland report, here we have the definition of growth, and they say, well, the report says that different limits hold for the use of energy, material, water, and land. And it's talking about general growth, Earth growth, humanity. And if you think about architecture, really architecture deals with energy, material, water, and land. So it's really in a parallel thinking of this Brundtland inform. So if we think about the environmental impact of architecture, let's think about what impact means. Because we have to think, or I would like to think, or I would like to make you think about what is the work of the architect on this impact in the earth, in the growing, in the sustainability, etc. And can we deal with impact? What is impact? Impact is the impact in the environment. Architects, we do not decide if the electricity is done by wind or by nuclear or something. So it's not our subject, the impact, the final impact on the environment. Maybe the consumption could be our subject, but I'm not sure, because in the same situation, the consumption depends more on the user than on the architect. So let's go to the first thing, and it's the demand. The demand is really where the architect works. So the design works on the demand. And after, when you have constructed this object, you can use in a way, so the consumption is related to use, or you can, depending on the use and the quantity of use and the quality of the materials, you have an impact, a more big impact in the earth than in other case. So let's go to this example was on energy demand, and energy, the impact, the consumption, and the demand, but we can do the same analysis on materials. So, well, the impact on the earth is not in our hand. Maybe the consumption is in our hand, but what is really, really in our hand in the architectural design is the demand. We decide the demand, not the consumption, not the impact. The same in water, and the same in land. So we can have different points, but we decide really the first thing. So when we are discussing about the impact, and you have a reference building, and we want to reduce, or we want to have a better level, etc., etc., etc. You have to reduce the impact, but what is sure is that this impact is not in our hand. We don't decide this, but we really decide the demand, the first stage, that we can say the quantity of architecture, like a global idea, the quantity, and taking into this whole quantity different things that we will see. What is quantity of architecture? One, quantity can be seen like this. If the use of this car and the other car is the same. It's not difficult to say that this one in the right hand needs more energy, more fuel, even if the engine is very, very efficient. So here we can discuss the difference between efficient. We can have a very efficient engine, but not effective. So really, to go to the beach or to go with the children to school, maybe the other thing is not so effective, not so efficient, but more effective. So it's a thought that architects, I think, that might reconsider or rethink about it. This was an example in the quantity of material done in the truck, in the hammer, and the energy consumed. But when we construct something, we don't have in mind the quantity of material we use, and finally it's not so evident. So the quantity in terms of kilograms is also really important, not only energy, not only amount in square meters, but also in cubic meters of material. And this is in Spanish, but the translation is that the 80% of the impact of a product is decided in the design process. So we are the makers or the designers that decide this part, very, very, very important of the building. So I think that we have to think more about the effect of our work more than to be more efficient, because if not, we design something that it's not a good design thing, but it's very, very efficient. But if it's not effective from the beginning of the design process, so it has no sense. So we'll see some examples of these things that we can, or these strategies, 3 strategies to control this quantity of architecture. One is the amount, the intensity of architecture, and sharing of architecture. Considering that these strategies are these strategies must take advantage of the opportunities they gave to us. So when we speak about amount, the first thing is to reduce the quantity, the volume, the square meters, and we can see some examples here. We have an hotel room is a project, and we can see that we have a lot of square meters for 2 people, a bathroom, and in the other side of this, we have another example. That's how to find the smallest hotel room we can find. And the challenge of the architect is this challenge that some companies, I can say the name, but take in a certain moment to do things smaller but best designed. To invest more in design than in the quantity and the quantity of material and the technology and other things. So smallest but very, very well designed. And in this way, we can find different examples of how we can use all the square meters, or you can not use these square meters to give more air to this very consolidated area in Barcelona. You can see the street here, and how this approach, this building, gives more quality to these spaces. So when you see the street, here is the first part of the street, and when you are walking and arriving to this new building, this different approach, the quality of the space, the quantity of air, light, etc., is better. So it's giving more quality, even if you leave quantity. We have another examples here. We have an interesting proposal that is to reduce absolutely the living space and the enclosed space, the conditioned space here, and construct less than in the other buildings and the other dwellings, but having this very beautiful space where we can do other activities. Here we have another view, and we can see that the bathroom is mostly open, and here we have only 1, 2, 3 pieces really closed, and the other is a big intermediate space, and the quantity of walls is less, but you change this small space by this air and cubic meters you have in this project. Or how to the consumption of land. We can construct an hotel in a very beautiful landscape, or to spread it in the mountains. In this way, we have very small rooms, but that are like small cabins in the forest, and the quantity of landscape you can see from this room is better and higher than if you were in a conventional kind of hotel or a conventional space. Another proposal for this kind of spaces. Here we have another example of minimum space and minimum consumption of soil, because here we can see that we don't need to move a lot of land and change a lot of land. If we don't use more this, we can pick up and put in another way, and we can recover this land, because when we construct something, we have we must have in mind that this land is a good, and it's very difficult to recover it when once has been constructed. So this is important to also consider this point. The second point is intensity, to have the intensity. Why we have to have the same intensity, the same quality of materials, or the same quantity of heating, or the same lighting system in a corridor, that in a room, that in a kitchen, so we have to qualify the different spaces of the building. So we have to decide which is the intensity of every part of the building, because to make, well, let's return to the first picture. This is a theater play, and what we need really, an scenario and a protection, and here protection, some place to see, and the other side is a theater, but without the walls. So really, is there necessary to have the walls? Depending on the period of the year. Of course, if it's raining, it's important. So we have to think about it. Here we have a beautiful house in Mallorca, where the climate is really good, and is a very interesting house from Hudson. Here, the first photograph is to see that here you have the sea, and the position is really exceptional. And here we have a interesting house, and when we look at it for the really closed spaces, we discover that only these spaces are really closed, and the other spaces are intermediated spaces, are porches or patios or something that connects one part of this part with the other and with the other, but in a continuous way. So it's not important to have all the building closed, because every time we are working about very complex skins, but does the skin have to be there, or is this the real situation of the skin? So where we decide to make the line between the interior and the exterior is important. Because here we have one part of this, in the bottom is the exterior dining, and here is the interior. So really from the house, it's difficult to see the difference between one part and another. So we can be the most of the day in an exterior part of this building without problem. Here is another building of Glen Murcutt. The same exercise if we consider the closed parts, but after when you see this building, the visual continuity is larger. It's not important to be closed or not. So the climate permits this. Here we have another example of this kind of intermediate spaces in project of La Catona Basal. They propose these intermediate spaces here is a retrofitting of another building, and finally this area is really the conditioned area. We can say. So we have two kinds of skin: the interior skin, the skin that separates the heated area from the not heated, and another skin that separates it from the really exterior. So we have a lot of intermediate spaces. Another example, but I will go faster as this. As you can see, this is an office building with a huge part of intermediate spaces. Another example is in a school. You see that in the section is clear how does it work, but you see that here they are playing with the codes and are not in the exterior conditions, but not in the interior conditions. But it's normal for children to be in these conditions. Is it normal to have always children in a heated area, or maybe some hours of the day they can be in an intermediate area without heating? Another example is the School of Architecture of Nantes, with a lot of intermediate spaces, so with a low intensity of architecture. And here we have two kinds of low intensity, because now I talk about conditioning intensity, but here we can talk also about the quality of the materials used. So we can use a low intensity of materials. So here we have finishings and an industrial image, but with very big spaces that would be appreciated in a lot of schools of architecture if we have these big spaces to draw, to put the models, to work with the models, and maybe the quality of the light, the quality of the finishings are not the same that in the rooms, in the interior rooms, but is enough for this kind of activity. Another type of intensity may be the material itself, the quantity of material, the mass of the material. Here we have an example of houses in China from Chipperfield, and we'll see that well, that the separations are in concrete, so imagine it's really beautiful. Well, I like it, but you have to consider or wonder if really is the best way to solve this problem. And in the other part of the rule, you have this example of how to solve the same thing, that is the separations in a house. And this is the less quantity of material, less quality of material with these cubes. So we have a room in these cubes, and it's a very light material. You can put one or another, we can change, and the intensity, if you compare them, really the final solution is, well, the solution itself is very different, but really the program is the same. It's a dwelling with a kitchen, a bathroom. If you look at the solution, is it more or less at the same scale? So they are examples of very different ways of consider the intensity of. Another example would be this housing in Nimes, where Jean-Noël presents two things. One is to put this corridor and use the corridor as the access of the house, and also present it as a balcony. And the other is in this interior. When one arrives to a social housing, it's usual that people, when arrives, changes 50% of the finishings. So the solution is not construct any finishing. Live in this way, and each one finish the building as he can. So in this way, they could construct these buildings at a low price with very interesting quality. But really the price was social housing. Here we have different examples. And this is the corridor, and this is the balcony. When you open from the other side, you can open, and you have well, an extension of the house. And the third strategy could be sharing. Sharing is not sharing directly, or maybe we can define it as if we have something, why we don't use what we already have. And another way of sharing things is why each time each one of us wants to have its own chair with its own bed, its own television, its own swimming pool, its own thing. So we are constructing like bubbles in the interior of the houses. So the example is when television started many years ago. In a village was one television. All people went to the bar to see the television. After this, each house had one television, and all the family were around to the television with all the discussions. After this, we had 2 or 3 televisions in the house, and each one had one television. And after, now with a computer, each one in a family has a computer, and each one can look at the program that they prefer. But I am from Barcelona, and when there is an important match ball, football match, an important football match of Barcelona, all people goes to the bar to see the match together. So finally, we have to decide which things we prefer to go to do together and which things can be done in community. Here we have an example of the extreme. We have two extremes of the hotel terms. Where this is the room area and this is the bath and equipment area. So the intensity of architecture is very high because you know that 1 square meter of this is very, very, very expensive in comparison with 1 square meter of this. So here maybe is only 1 person or 2 persons at maximum with 2 VCs, 1 bathroom complete, 1 kitchen. So it's a lot of equipment for only 2 persons and maybe 1. So when you look at the plan of the building, you count the quantity of square meters used by this intensity of architecture with a lot of fixing and equipment and a lot of very expensive and complicated things. Well, it's a really complicated and very complex building. And here we have an example of 18th century a lodgement building with a small room, and it seems incredible. We have been looking for more, but we cannot find more than this VC area. I can't imagine the situation of this because how dirty would it be, but maybe this is a extremely low intensity of services. So we have to find a point, but not to go to a headquarter. This is a headquarter. Or maybe to think in common things as a possibility, as a quality, as a space of sharing experiences, sharing time, sharing a lot of things, as Arab baths were. Or maybe nowadays could be a swimming pool. If we design a very pleasant swimming pool, can be a version of the bath, so the Arab bath. In opposition of our particular swimming pool here, we have only this part. Each one has a swimming pool. You can see how much land it consumes. No one is in the swimming pool because after a while or 3 days of using it, the maintenance is very high and no one uses this, so the intensity has to be rethought. And even it consumes a lot of land in the flat land, but maybe in the high land. So here is the extreme to have in Brazil to have each one has a swimming pool in the balcony. So it's the example of each one has the TV, the swimming pool, the personal computer, the personal swimming pool. And we are in some situations where we are going towards the sharing spaces or giving quality to these sharing spaces. When we have student residents, we give more important to these sharing spaces than to have small rooms, not only a row of small rooms, but we put a lot of intention of the design in these spaces and these common spaces. Because we imagine life in these common spaces and we give a lot of quality of them. Another approach to sharing things is not sharing spaces, but sharing ideas, sharing necessities. Here we have a residence, and we have here a stair, and we need a stair, we need an elevator, and as we need a stair and elevator, we organize all the rooms around this in the way that in a way that we have a common space in each plant, and this is changing. All the rooms have exterior view, light, and that comes from the design of this object. So to design with an object of high quality, very well thought, and here we can put the stair, the elevator, place for cook, a common place, etc. And is that I have to, if I need an elevator and I need a stair, so how can I take advantage of this instead of putting in a closed space and forget this and put in the part of the facade and avoid me the exterior view. And an extreme example of this is, as I need furniture, so why I cannot design the furniture in a way that is enough to support the building. So it's the furniture and the structure of the building. So it's if I put in the correct way and I give the section, I can avoid the structure. So as I need a lot of furniture, why don't use it for another thing? So it's another approach to sharing things. And this sharing approach has been done always. It's now that we are losing this idea, because we have a lot of examples, in Italy more than in another part maybe, of taking advantage of what we have. Another beautiful example is La Mezquita de Córdoba. That was a mezquita, and after they put a cathedral, and after and how take advantage of something I have. Or the expression that I don't know if exists in English or in Italian, to live under a bridge. So the bridge gives us the first protection, the more important protection against rain. So after this, to arrange an under bridge to live is easier. And here we have an example of a very developed, very designed solution for living under the bridge, because we have the bicycle parking and how to put the clothes and even a garden. So it's really a designed place, taking advantage of a cover that we have. And with this picture I finish reconsidering these three approaches to control the quantity of architecture. One is the amount, another is the intensity, another is sharing, in order to control the demand from the point of view of the design, from the beginning of the design process to control the demand of energy, of material, of water, and of land. Because I think that architecture acts on demand to reduce the impact, not acts to final impact, acts to demand, and in this way we can reduce the impact on the world and on the environment. Thank you very much for your attention.